Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a really tough one, the story of Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to break down the files, piece by piece, to really get a handle on the man, his insane network, and the system that let him get away with it for so long. You know, the crazy thing about the Jeffrey Epstein story is that it doesn't really start with his life, it starts with his death. August 10th, 2019. He's found dead in his cell in a maximum security jail. And boom, the questions, the theories, they started instantly. So, the official story? Suicide. But, come on. The circumstances were just bizarre. We're talking about one of the most secure jails in New York. And on that night, the CCTV cameras just happened to malfunction, 2 guards were asleep, and, get this, he'd just been taken off suicide watch. It all just felt too convenient, you know? And that's what fueled all these theories that maybe, just maybe, he was silenced to protect some very powerful people. Okay, so to even begin to understand why anyone might want him silenced, we have to rewind. We've got to ask the big questions. Who exactly was this guy, Jeffrey Epstein? And how in the world did he build this dark and twisted empire? Believe it or not, his career actually started as a math teacher at this really fancy school back in the 70s. But teaching wasn't his endgame. Nope. His ambition took him straight to Wall Street. And that's where he found his niche. Getting in with the super rich, managing their money, and making an absolute fortune for himself along the way. And with that kind of money, he started building this personal kingdom. We're talking properties all over the globe. The largest private mansion in Manhattan, a massive ranch out in New Mexico, a place in Paris, and of course, his own private island. He owned some of the most insane real estate you can imagine, all of it creating this shiny, glamorous front for something much darker. But the real centerpiece, the crown jewel of his whole operation, was his private island, Little St. James. Of course, it didn't take long for it to get a much more sinister nickname, Epstein Island. This place was the very heart of his web, the secret stage where his worst crimes allegedly took place. So you're probably wondering, how did all these powerful people get to this super remote island? Well, they flew in on his private jet. And that plane, it got a nickname from the media that is just chilling. And it says everything you need to know. Look, Epstein's real power wasn't just about the money. Not at all. It was about who he knew. His connections were everything. He worked for years to build friendships with some of the most influential people on the planet. And that created this web, this shield of power that protected him. His social circle was literally a who's who of the global elite. You had former presidents like Bill Clinton, you had Donald Trump, you had actual royalty like Prince Andrew, tech giants like Bill Gates, Hollywood stars, the list goes on. These weren't just casual friends. These connections gave him this incredible veneer of legitimacy and a backstage pass to the highest levels of power. And the fallout from all this reached right into the British royal family. It completely engulfed them. Prince Andrew ended up getting stripped of his titles after he settled a massive lawsuit with one of Epstein's victims. It's just a crazy example of the real-world consequences here. So this leads to a really terrifying question, right? Were all these powerful people just friends? Or was there something darker going on? When the FBI raided his home, they found CDs and photos. And that just lit a fire under the speculation that maybe, just maybe, he was secretly recording his guests. Was it friendship? Or was it blackmail? Because that's the thing. Behind all the glitz, all the luxury, all the powerful friends, was a truly horrifying reality. A carefully, meticulously organized criminal network built entirely on the abuse of young girls. And here's the key. He wasn't doing this alone. His girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was right there with him, playing an absolutely critical part. If Epstein was the mastermind using his power and money, then Maxwell was the recruiter. She used her high society status to find and lure vulnerable young girls right into their trap. Getting any kind of justice here was just an unbelievably long and difficult fight. It all started way back in 2005, and it didn't start with some big police investigation. It started with the incredible bravery of one victim, Courtney Wild. But even after that, it took more than a decade of legal fights and some truly amazing journalism to finally drag this whole disgusting story out into the light. Even with dozens of victims coming forward, the system protected him at first. In 2008, he got this secret plea deal, a deal that has been called the biggest joke in judicial history. It basically kept the victims completely in the dark and shielded not just him, but anyone else involved from serious federal charges. It was unbelievable. So what was his punishment for all this? Just 18 months. And he only served 13 of them. And even that was a joke. He got this VIP treatment, a work release program where he could just leave the jail for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. It was less a punishment and more of, well, a complete miscarriage of justice. So Epstein dies in 2019, but the story, the fight for justice, that was far from over. The focus just pivoted. It moved to his accomplices and to the massive pile of secrets he left behind. Epstein may have escaped a trial by dying, but his number one partner couldn't. In July of 2020, the FBI finally tracked Ghislaine Maxwell down. They found her hiding out on this remote property in New Hampshire, and they arrested her. Her trial was just harrowing. Victim after victim came forward and described her role as a key player in the abuse. And finally, in June 2022, the sentence came down: 20 years in federal prison. Some measure of justice at last. After he died, a compensation fund was set up using his massive estate. And so far, it's paid out over $121 million to more than 150 survivors. It's not justice, not really, but it's at least a financial acknowledgement of the incredible harm they suffered. Okay, so Epstein is gone. Maxwell is in prison. You might think the story's over, right? Not even close. Because now, the focus is shifting to what he left behind, those infamous Epstein files. The public outrage over this whole thing was so huge, it actually did something rare. It got politicians from both sides to agree. Congress passed this Epstein Files Transparency Act, basically forcing the government's hand to start unsealing thousands and thousands of pages of documents from the case. But here's the kicker. Even with all the documents that have been released, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about an estimated 1 million pages that are still sealed, hiding who knows what and whose names. This whole thing is just such a chilling lesson. It shows you that money and power can build a pretty strong wall to hide behind, but they can't make the crime itself just disappear. Sooner or later, as this case proves, the truth has a way of finding a crack in that wall. And that's really where we're left, with this huge, lingering question. Yeah, some chapters of this story have closed, but with over 1 million pages still under lock and key, the full story of Jeffrey Epstein and everyone connected to him, it's definitely not over. The biggest secrets might still be buried in those files, just waiting.